Hi, it's Clark on Temptress. Today I'm going to continue the series to help us find the best inexpensive lithium iron phosphate batteries. Today we're going to review this battery by a company that is utterly unpronounceable, but I call it PUP. This battery is by a company that I think it's poor choice in names because it's got like way too many consonants and no vowels, so it's not pronounceable, at least in English. But I refer to it as the PUP batteries. We did our first review of all the batteries on their real economy low line offering, and it worked really well for us in the camper. I have since done a review on a very similar battery by another company, and I didn't really love how either of them did bus bars and such, so I don't really recommend it unless money is what's really important. This is a different battery. It's by the same brand, but this battery, I know more about it than I usually know at this time. If you've been watching my videos, you might remember this battery. Don't they look alike? Well, we tore this one down, and if you needed cold weather shut off and those kind of things, this is the top of the list. Well, I've told you that that company makes batteries without labels and sends them out, and I am not going to tell you who they send them out to. But you're all very bright people, and this battery is in the same case. I have checked, it has the same cells. They are these cells. Both batteries use the same cells. It has the same BMS. It's this BMS. Both batteries have the same BMS. You figure it out. Since we really know what's inside this battery, and also since this battery has a lot of cool features like cold weather shut off, because lithium iron phosphate batteries would be destroyed pretty damn quick if you froze them below 0 Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit and gave them a charge. You can discharge them when they're cold, but if you charge them at that temperature, it's pretty short on their life. This also has a very nice Bluetooth interface. And because of the Bluetooth interface, we can look at all the individual cell voltages as we had for its brother over there. Well, all of that together, and the fact that when I took its brother apart, it was really hard to take apart, and I caused an internal short, and I almost had to throw it in the ocean. You can refer back to that video. It scared the hell out of me. I'm not going to tear this one apart because we know what's inside. And when we do our electrical tests, we're going to use the BMS anyway, so I'm just leaving it together. So sorry if you don't get to see the inside of this one, but refer back to the other video and you get to see the inside of this one. So what are we going to do? I have charged this up to 100% with my BankManager. It's the device I make that lets you mix lead and lithium, and it's kind of the reason for this whole set of videos, because people buy these and they ask me for my opinion on these. So I'm developing an opinion. Since we're not going to tear it apart, I think the first thing to do is to overcharge it. I've already charged it up with this to 100%, not over 100%, as a lot of people do. But right now, we're going to take it right up until this thing screams uncle. So let's open up our cupboard. And this is Temptress's basically bench power supply that I built out of a buck boost converter. And it lets me control power. What a mess, Clark. It lets me control charging power. It's got a lot of other uses. We're gonna now slightly overcharge this battery and see what happens. Took a little break there also because I had forgotten to get my phone. I've got that all set up now. Let me show you how the app works, because some people have asked a question, what happens if I have a bunch of these batteries? And I have 2 on the table right now. So you push device list, and it's like anything Bluetooth. You get a list of batteries that are in range, and we're connected to the PUP right now. The LFS is also in range. And interestingly, there is another battery in range on another boat. I think I'm going to do a video on that specifically, how Bluetooth is good and bad. Just to point it out as an aside, if I go into that, and there is no password per battery, if I go into that, I can turn his battery off from my boat. That's hacking. And I could do it very easily. It's kind of a downside for having a Bluetooth battery, I guess. If you get one of these and all of a sudden you get some weird thing happening, like the battery shuts off, go check the app and make sure it's on. Probably the more evil thing to do to your neighbor would be turn off its ability to take a charge. I know if that happened to me, I'd be like, the battery's working, it has voltage, I'm not able to charge it, it's my charge controller. And I'd probably spend 3 hours trying to figure out what's wrong with my charge controller, and all it is some kid on another boat turned off my battery's ability to charge. So anyway, know that exists. Anyway, we'll select the PUP, and we'll take a look here. What do we get? Well, we get the voltage of the battery currently, which is 13.4. I charged it up 100%, but it's been like 5 or 6 days. It's been floating there. That's a very reasonable voltage. Nothing's coming in or out of it, of course. Looking at the cells, they're within 2/100ths of a volt from each other. That's kind of probably the most important single field to look at in this app. At 13.4 volts, you always expect them to be really close. And then if we scroll down here, if we scroll up, we get a percent of charge and stuff. 99.5 amp hours. Probably it internally self-discharged over the week, or maybe its indicator never went up to actual full, but the BankManager says it did. I trust that more, honestly. And then here's a little graph that shows us the voltage of the individual cells. We're going to use that quite a bit today to find out what's going on inside. Anyway, let's start putting some power in. I think I'm going to kind of set this right here so this camera can pick it up. All right. We'll hook up the battery leads, the charging leads. Whoa, always scares me. That spark is because this thing has a bunch of capacitors, and of course this is a battery, so it charges up the capacitors backwards. I gotta learn not to jump. It's fully expected. I really should turn this on first, and then they would have equal voltage. Well, you know, you live life long enough, you figure everything out. Okay, so let's turn on the charger. And I've got it charging at 3 amps right now. Let's see how that goes. So it's charging at 3.2 amps. The application here says the battery is taking 3.3 amps. Yeah, it's all pretty damn close. Close enough for what's going on here. And we should start seeing the cells come up in voltage very slowly. All this process will take a while, so I'm gonna stop the video now and come back to you when it's almost charged, or well, fully charged if I get distracted. I've cranked it up to 5 amps of charging rate. That's just as fast as this guy can go, 5.1. And just going to call attention to what's happening to the cells. Each individual cell has a different voltage, but they're real close, as they should be at this time. The lowest one is 3.36, and the highest one is 3.39. Again, real close together. As we charge a lithium iron phosphate batteries, the voltage goes up, and it doesn't go up by much because lithium iron phosphate's really efficient. So as you take power in or out of it, it doesn't really affect its voltage all that much until you get past full charge. When you get past that 100%, it starts doing what we call the hockey stick, where the voltage just skies right up. All the cells kind of do that same skying up. And if one cell is charged just a little behind the other, you can see that they kind of are following each other. So down here, that doesn't mean much. But when they start going up, they start getting very different voltages. And that's what cell balance refers to. Now these cells, all of them, for every manufacturer I've touched so far, and this might be just a discount battery thing, or it might be all batteries because I haven't torn apart my Battleborns. They do this thing. They are showing a little bit, and I don't think it's too much, but a little bit of a difference in cell voltages. It's because they haven't been balanced. Since we're not going to do a teardown on this, and it's not going to take me all week to do this video, I'm going to go into a little different direction on this one. This BMS has an internal balancer. Let's see if the internal balancer on this does anything, and let's see how long it takes it to do the thing. Okay, we've been charging for a bit now. Let's see what's going on. I noticed that the balance indicator came on the little app here, so it's trying to balance. and the cells have diverged a bit. They're more than 1/10 apart in voltage, which is too much. But we're going to let this guy fix his own problem today. I guess the first thing to do, we'll just let it charge up until it looks like cell number 1 is the one that's the most charged to start with, until that battery signals the system to shut down. It's up to 3.72. I really like to see like 3.65 as the shut off. It's 13.73. Always makes me nervous. You know, will the smoke come out if we go too high in voltage? And I guess it makes me nervous because I did that once on a home-built battery I put together. 3.75, still taking a charge. Oh, nope, it stopped taking a charge. And it's given us the indicator that one of the cells is up there too high, which is exactly what it should do. So this guy's working fine. Now I'm going to use my device to hold the voltage well below this 14.52 so that it'll actually take a charge, but down a bit. And I'm going to try to keep it balancing, just keep it in that range, and I'm going to leave it balancing for a good long time. How the balancer works on these is the BMS, of course, has wires going to all of the individual cells, and it can say, hey, that one's a little high in voltage. It can put a resistor across that and actually use some power out of that. Now, the resistors are very high in ohms. They don't pull the power very fast. So it's a process that takes quite a while. I have yet to let a BMS actually balance its own battery in this video series, and I think I should. If you notice your batteries were getting out of balance and you had a good BMS, it would make sense to let this happen. If you had a BankManager, you're kind of not going to be able to do it in the default settings. But this guy has a mode that is charged voltage. You just put it in that mode, bring up the voltage, and then let your regular like solar charge controller just hold it up, you know, by telling it its absorption is real high. Till we do this test, I have no clue how long it's going to really take. It might be a half hour, it might be 6 hours. Anyway, we're going to learn more. I love to learn. Let's see what's happening. Okay, some time has gone by. I've figured out how to do the balance with this BMS, so I'm going to pass that on to you guys. What I would suggest is you charge them the way you want to charge them, you know, good and fast or whatever, watching the BMS application. As soon as it starts to say balance mode starts, stop your charge, find a way to charge really slow. I can set this thing for constant current, so I set it for just a little more than a ½ amp of charge. To make this thing balance, it has to be charging at more than a ½ amp, and it has to be at a high enough voltage that the differential starts happening, that the battery voltages, the cell voltages start drifting from each other. Anyway, I actually spent a couple hours because I was playing around with it. I ran it through a few cycles where I would discharge the battery a bit and then slowly charge it back up. And the balancer does work. It's not super fast, but it does work. You just have to watch it, but if you have a Bluetooth device, it's not hard to watch it. And if it starts getting out of balance or it ever causes you problems or whatever, or you just feel like doing it, that would be the method. So we're gonna charge it to the very top now so we can watch it. I'm going to use the slow method to do it. So I turn on the charger. It's set for constant current, 0.6 amps. And we take a look at the display here. What we find is it's charging at 0.69 amps, close enough. It's in balance mode, that's on. And we're going to charge it until the voltage comes high enough in whatever the lead cell is to trip it out. And then we'll see the protection come on. And anyway, it's slowly taking on power. Here is the voltage of every individual cell, but most importantly, it's this, the voltage differential. So the difference between the lowest voltage cell and the highest voltage cell is 4/100ths of a volt. That's going to separate and become larger as we charge. For you, it's been seconds. For me, it's been a while, and I've forgotten what the earlier voltage was, but I think it was 0.17 volts that they were separated by at shutoff. So we're expecting a much smaller number now. Okay, we're getting close now. The per cell voltage, it seems to like to turn off at around 3.75, just a little bit north of that. And we're at 3.74. What's interesting is the voltage difference between the lowest cell and the highest cell is now 0.07 instead of that earlier number. So she does balance. Oh, I wasn't watching. It stopped charging. It's now saying that one of the cells is over voltage, which is great. It set the charge current to 0, so nothing's coming in. And well, that's the rest of the cycle. I think anything below 0.1 is acceptable. Though if you worked with this longer, they would even out. Usually at this point, I take the battery and hook it to the inverter and, you know, see what gets hot. But that's not going to change. It's going to be exactly the same as the LiFePO4, which I did before. They are the same battery as far as putting out power. We will run it through a discharge cycle where I draw 10 amps out of it until it's depleted. And we'll find out what the amp hours are total. I'm suspecting we're going to see just a little more power out of this one than we did the LiFePO4 because I balanced the cells, and that will give you just that skosh more. Oh, and to be fair, I'm going to discharge this battery a bit and then recharge it with the BankManager, so it's apples and apples and everybody is charged to 100%, not this super high 14 volt, scary high voltage. We're going to do it the same. So I'll do that now, and for you it'll be a second, for me it'll be tomorrow. Okay, it's been a couple days, my time. I've charged it with the BankManager, and then I discharged it through this device. We found that it had 102.5 amps in it the way I charged it up, so that's perfectly good. I'm going to actually do something a little different because, as the theme here, this battery we've kind of already reviewed. So I'm going to use the leaderboard myself and look at the last battery to remind me about it. And I recommend you take a look at this leaderboard. It's in the description down below. It gives you a list of all the batteries we review, and more important than the review alone, I might change my mind later. A much better battery might show up and I might change things around. So this is what I thought the day I filmed it, but that's my latest thought on the subject. Anyway, going down the list, it did quite well, of course, because, you know, it did. Capacity, going to give it a great because it has more than 100 amp hours in it. Has just a little more than the other one, and that's not telling. That is more the fact that we did a balance of this than it is any difference. These are the same batteries. The cells, great, same cells. They seem to function fine for me. I do like this case. If you look at the other video, I had a hell of a time getting it apart, which means it's not going to pop apart on you. It's epoxied together. It's just hermetically sealed. It's what a case should be. And it's relatively small. You know, it's not that tiny little pouch cell battery by Redodo we did the review on, but for a prismatic cell, this is pretty small. Well done. Give that an excellent. Build quality, excellent. They chose a really good BMS. I think it gets an excellent for the build quality. The company, I'm only going to give it a good. And let me explain it though. It's not necessarily the reason not to buy this battery, because it's not fair. This is not apples to apples. This company, we bought their initial battery, the other PUP, and I contacted them as a regular buyer, and they weren't good at answering my questions. For the LiFePO4, they contacted me trying to convince me to do a review of their battery. So they want to really make me happy. So I don't think that's fair, but the fact that I did ask questions to this company and I didn't get satisfactory answers tells me a little something. But I wouldn't let it affect you. It's the same battery. It's just, you know, whether they're answering the questions about it or not. Cost value at the time of the video, excellent. It's actually the same price as the LiFePO4 right now. Things change. I'm sure they're tracking each other. Came right down to it, I would, and I've seen others that look the same case, look like the same battery. I would just choose with my wallet. I'd consider them the same battery. If you're not supposed to mix different types, but it should be just fine to mix these different brand names because the only real difference is this sticker. It also gets the couple extra points for the extra features it has. Remember, this has Bluetooth and it has working cold protection. Both of those things are cool. They're not critical though. we as consumers tend to want the best. And the less we know about a technology, the more stuff we buy. Having 18 displays that in color tell you all kinds of information isn't necessarily important. What's important in a battery is that they absorb power and they give you the power back and they last a long time. And the Bluetooth does not really help that. It makes it so that you could see what's happening inside the cell. Maybe that's useful. Mostly it gives you an app and some brain candy. So if that's important to you, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. You make the decision. As far as cold weather, if you're up on a mountaintop, good choice. That's a feature that I would want in a battery if I had to abandon something for a while, like a camper. If you live up north, or even might go up north, because campers are very mobile, I would give extra points for something that could protect itself if it had to be left in the cold with some solar panels on. But if you're a boat in the tropics, it means nothing. It just means nothing. It will never get that cool ever on this boat. And actually in most boats, even if you're in a cold place, think about it. If you're floating in the ocean and where you are is like 50 degrees, something like that at the coldest, your hull isn't, you're just not going to get to freezing inside the boat very often. But you have to make that decision yourself. So anyway, looking down that leader list, it might be this is the right battery for you, or it might be a smaller battery is the right battery for you, or it might be you want more cells in one box under one BMS, because there's kind of a limit to how many of these things you want in parallel, because they don't necessarily all charge right if there's resistance in the connections. In fact, this I believe is the last 100 amp hour battery I will be reviewing. I'm only now going to bigger cases. It's still more power per cubic inch when you go to a bigger case usually. Bigger batteries, because most of you that are watching this are boat people, and most of you are running at lowish voltage, 12 volts, maybe 24. So you're going to want more than 100 amp hours or more than maybe 200 amp hours. So I think bigger cases are where it's at, and that's where I'm going. Also in the future, as I mentioned earlier, a company that sells raw cells at a good price point contacted me, and I'm going to get a bunch of raw cells and I'm going to put together my own battery from scratch, as it were, you know, using cells and a BMS and jumpers and all that. So we're going to get a chance to see what's involved in putting your own together. It isn't that hard. Anyway, this is the PUP, I'm going to call it, mini battery. I should show you the label. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you learned a little something. I kind of purposely rambled in other directions because I'm trying to make a little education when I'm not actually tearing the battery down. You know, keep the video the same length, but talk about different things. Even if you've already decided on a battery, you might enjoy this series because it's just me. I always ramble into something and maybe something useful will come out of it. Glad you watched. Hope you subscribe. If you've got friends thinking of batteries, please share our videos. We've just got a report back that our videos are sharing really, really high. I really appreciate you guys sharing the various videos out. That is helping grow the channel immensely, and I really appreciate it. Thanks, and bye from Clark.